Welcome to another episode of Ask the Experts, where we connect with really smart people within the Restaurant Technologies Network to learn about their expertise. Today, we have Andy Dulka, Chief Information Officer at RT. Now, I've been looking forward to our chat for a while now. Andy is like the hidden MVP at RT. He has one of the most important jobs, but we don't always hear from him. He's like the offensive lineman in football. If we have to hear from him, something bad probably happened. So it's probably good that he stays a little bit under the radar, but he does make an appearance here and there just to remind us how smart he really is. So I wanted to talk about cybersecurity today because I was having a casual conversation with one of our media partners, and she noted that they had a 600% spike in views in their articles about cybersecurity. So cybersecurity is more essential than traditional security in the sense of locks and cameras and other ways to protect our business. And so I wanted to make sure that our customers and our network had the proper insight to be prepared when it came to cybersecurity. So with that, I wanted to introduce Andy Dulka. Andy, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Cool. So just to introduce you to our audience, I know that you have a BA from St. John's. You were the CIO at Regis Corporation and Starkey Hearing Technologies before RT. And little note here is that you're kind of like Leonardo DiCaprio before his Oscar, three-time Orby Award finalist, which is given to the top CIO in Minnesota and nominated again this year. So congratulations.
Well, thank you. It's always good to be that good offensive line, making sure that all the right blocking is being done.
Yeah, absolutely. So just so our audience gets to know you a little bit better beyond that intro that I just gave, I do have a segment called Three Things. So the first question is, why did you get into IT?
You know, a lot of my history in technology goes back to my upbringing. My dad worked for IBM for 35 years. And so he planted that seed very, very early about what this thing was about technology and how it's changing business and impacting offices. At the same time, I'm one of 7 kids, and he also believed that we all had to have a work ethic. So he had a hobby farm on the side. And so we got to play farmers, but also he instilled this curiosity in me. And I think that curiosity is what's carried forward for me to always understand what can technology do for business, my natural curiosity. So it's more than just what I do for a living. It's actually also my passion on the side of, what's this technology doing and how can it help? So I'm a big gadget guy and love everything technology related.
Wow, 7 kids. So I have 2 toddlers, 2 under 4. That's a lot already. So 7 just sounds, I can't even comprehend that. But work ethic instilled by your parents is always important. So that's really good to hear. I can't imagine, might be going down a tunnel here, but technology changes so much within a year. I can't imagine what it was like when your dad was working versus today. So it's come such a long way.
Yeah, he started in IBM at the time they were doing time clocks was the big technology, which moved into typewriters, that moved into, electronic typewriters, from manual typewriters to electronic to computer-based word processing, all of that stuff, all the way up through major computer systems we see today. So
yeah, that's crazy. We're going to get into a little bit, even about the future of IT and technology later on. But second question I have for you is, RT really encourages employees to give back to communities. And I know that you are very proud, as you should be, of your philanthropy work that you've done with RT on behalf of RT. One of those things near and dear to my heart is the game of golf. You use the game of golf to help give back to communities. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about what you do?
Yeah, so I have 2 major passions to allocate my time outside of work and to use everything that comes with the technology space. And that's really, one is Society for Information Management, the Minnesota chapter, which is all about how do we bring up that next generation of technical leaders and practitioners. And so SIM Minnesota has been a great opportunity for me to help bring that to the community. The other one is CIOs Against Cancer, which is in partnership with the American Cancer Society. And it's using our tech footprint and all the relationships we have to help generate funds for cancer research. And we've been doing that now for 3 years. And we had our best year ever in 2024. And we're looking for even more events in 2025. So good purposeful passions that get to leverage the chair, but also the community piece.
Yeah, that's great. Cancer is definitely something that I think once you get to, a certain age, it's touched someone in your life in some way. And so it affects just so many people. And so that's such a great cause. I know that another thing that RT does that you lead is we donate all of our old technology to an organization. And we've done that for quite a while now. Maybe can you give me a little bit insight into that just so I don't get any details wrong?
Yeah, so it's about taking the used equipment that comes out of service for us and donating to companies that can put it back into use. And so it started before I got here, but I've done it at previous organizations where you take your old laptops, your old desktops, your old equipment, and cycle it into organizations that can take it out to people that are in need of that technology. Because technology is so pervasive, getting access to technology is absolutely one of those first foundational critical steps. And I'm glad that we're able to participate and continue to donate and be part of that cycle.
Yeah, and it's so important, especially I know that I think I read a story where we gave some technology to a family in need, and they had a couple young kids in school that really used that technology for their education and to help them get ahead that way. So that's such a great thing that we do. I know I'm biased, but that's such a great thing that we do.
Well, and I think the other thing that we do is our education foundation,
Yeah.
just internally, and that again goes back to this idea of how do we give back and make sure that education is such a key part of development for everyone.
Yep, absolutely. So last question, as I mentioned, I know that you're a golfer, and I always want to ask this to every golfer, so I'm just going to throw this in here. Every golfer has a list of favorite courses. So what is your favorite golf course?
I don't think I'm good enough to have a favorite or any of the really fancy golf courses that a lot of people will talk about. For me, golf is my time away from the screen and away from technology, so it matters more who I'm with. But to answer your question in a way that's meaningful, the course I play the most is a local course. That's a town course that's been open for over 90 years and just a great community and a great number of people. It's the New Prague Golf Course. And so that's where I tend to, if you're going to find me, that's where you're going to find me.
Of course. So we're going to try to simplify this complex topic as best as we can, and that's why you're here. So we typically frame these expert conversations within the context of our customers, but I think cybersecurity is something that pertains to anyone and everyone today. But we're going to start small. So many of our customers are independent restaurant owners. They don't have entire IT teams for support. Thus, they may be some of the most vulnerable customers that we have. So what are some proactive ways these smaller businesses can protect themselves?
I think the easiest way when I talk to folks about where do I get started in this is just start at your home life, right? Start with the things that you do to protect your own family's cyber world, right? So as you're thinking about your banking accounts or your school accounts or community accounts that you're involved in, so start there. So think of digital locks, most important. And as a restaurant owner, you're not going to leave your doors unlocked at the end of the night. So same things, you got to think about locking your stuff down, right? So, and that can be anything from what fancy terms like multi-factor authentication to passkeys to all these things. The big thing is that the small changes are the things that give you the best benefit. So think passwords, locking stuff down. I think the other thing that you really want to do, just like you do in your restaurants, is do regular checkups. Inspect what you expect, make sure that if you can see when the last time you've logged into something and it doesn't, so just use those tools that are available to you. And then just make sure that you're teaching your team, just like you would teach your family good practices of locking the doors and making sure stuff is taken care of at home. You do the same thing for your business. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. It can be. But if you start there, a wide swath of what you do for cyber out of the gate, you can take care of.
Yeah, I still think not enough businesses really realize just how much it will cost them if they are not responsible, not proactively protecting their business in that way. Because when you become reactive, it usually costs a lot more, not only in the investment of your infrastructure in your web security, but the harm it can do to your business and business reputation moving forward as well. So
Absolutely.
what is the first thing these businesses do need to do if they discover a breach?
First thing is take a deep breath, right? Because by the time you discover it, likely whatever their intent was is probably going to already have occurred. And so just like you would in your restaurant, if all of a sudden you walked in one day and all of your food was spoiled, you don't just quick throw everything away. You do some investigation. You try to figure out, why did that happen, right? What can we do to prevent that from happening? And if needed, you have to contact people. Sometimes it's your insurance carrier. Sometimes it's local authorities. Sometimes it's other franchisees to find out if they have any information or what's. But you really kind of have to do the same thing. As you got to slow down. A lot of the mistakes that are made in recovering from a cyber issue are the knee-jerk things that are done afterwards. But there's some good basic things you do. If you discover that you've have a leak or a breach, just like you'd call a professional like you do a plumber. So there's lots of firms out there that focus in helping you retrace those steps. But change passwords, log devices out of systems, reboot stuff, just those basics that get your operation back to functioning. And then you can deal with the ramifications of whatever that leak was or breach in normal course of your business.
Can it be as simple? So I'm in PR, so part of that is crisis management, right? So we do plan, if there's a crisis, then there's a playbook of how to react to that. So for these smaller businesses that may not always be thinking about what happens if a breach occurred, can it be as simple as that, maybe just creating a playbook in case something happens so they know the steps that they have to take? That way they can kind of be one step ahead in being reactive. So it's like almost being proactive to being reactive.
In a lot of cases, if this is something that's on your mind as a small business owner and it's keeping you up at night, practice it. Sit down with your team and go, okay, so what would happen if we found out one day our point of sale got hacked, or credit card information got hacked, or whatever it is? What would we do? And sort of dry run it. That's actually what we do inside of RT. Is we do which are called basically tabletop exercises. Is we have a scenario and then we see how people react to the scenario, and then if they weren't the right actions, we tune the actions. Because when you can think it through ahead of time and put it in that, like you said, the playbook, or think of it as a set of recipes for you to play out, if that happens, you're much calmer and you're not going to miss the things that are really, really important in the moment. And we've seen some pretty high profile things, especially here in the Twin Cities, of issues where people didn't handle the PR correctly. And it actually creates a bigger problem for the organization than if they had just basically had, like you said, a good playbook, or at least a recipe for how to deal with it when it happens. Because it's in the cybersecurity world, it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. So. Yeah.
And we'll kind of get into that a little bit later as well. But I do want to shout out two of my favorite people at RT on your team, Sunday and George, who are responsible for cybersecurity at RT. I will say that when I first started, I felt like I knew what I was doing, but then they always run these tests, right? These tests for us. And actually my first year here, I had to go into extra training. And I think I'm a lot better at it now, because I've been here for almost 3 years now, and haven't had any extra training over the last 2 years. So I will say that just RT, from the RT side, like the organization protects us with training pretty well. And I think I've gotten a lot better at that. So I think these businesses can also put in place some kind of trainings to help themselves and their staff to kind of get there. So speaking of which, it does seem like there are more phishing emails and scams out there than ever before, both for businesses and on a personal level. So what steps can customers take to protect themselves?
Yeah, so your best tool in this case is the employee. And understanding that they're going to be the most targeted aspect of it, because it's the easiest to social engineer. It's the easiest for people in busy lives to just click on links or open stuff, because so much of our business is conducted electronically. And so it's really around training and like the training you've gone through, but also sitting down like, hey, if something seems too good to be true, or this is out of the blue, or seems like odd, it's always a good thing to call time out and pick up the phone and actually talk to somebody going, did you actually ask for that? Or is that something that we're doing now? We always say we'd much prefer to acknowledge that something's legitimate than have to deal with the ramifications of someone just assuming it was legitimate. So
Right.
it's really around training your employees, and it's no different than restaurants do with training food safety routines for the kitchen, right? That can be pretty daunting if you come into a kitchen and you've never worked in one. What are all these food safety rules? All right, you can kind of treat your cyber the same way and go, there's some really basic things. You can hang the signs up, the little infographics that give you all those shortcuts to reminding you, like, don't cross-contaminate, don't do those things, because that's kind of like what's going to happen in the phishing world.
Yeah, always better safe than sorry in this situation, and they're on the side of caution.
Yeah, and I think the other big thing is talk to your teams and find out where their perspective is. One of the things that's great about, you mentioned George on our team, is he actually came out of our field. So he was a technician for many, many years. And so we have a perspective of somebody who's out in the field, who's in these restaurants. And he's like, and here's the things when you're a technician and you're busy and you're bouncing around, here are the things that we want them to worry about. So asking your employees kind of where they're coming from will help you make sure that whatever instructions you put forth land and stick with your employees.
Absolutely. So these scams seem to be getting more and more sophisticated. And now that AI exists and people can now literally pretend to be other people, both on the phone or even on video with deep fakes. Let's say we were on a call, like you could even have someone that's just pretending to be me right now, right? With like a deep fake or some kind of filter on on the person's face. So what can businesses do to protect themselves against AI? Or is it maybe kind of too early? Are we not quite there yet with the AI and cybersecurity?
I don't think we're quite where we need to be on the detection side. I think the front line's always going to be exploited with the opportunistic people who are trying to find scams and send me money because you need to do that. But it's really no different than early money laundering or money fakes in your restaurants, right? You employed things like the pens to make sure your 20s were correct, or you check the credit card machines so they don't have skimmers on them, right? As technology advances, the tools that will come out for you are going to also increase right now. I say the simplest thing is always do two-factor verification, just like you do with your passwords. If my wife was calling me saying I had to send her $50,000 because of something, I'd probably go to Find My and see if she's actually located where she says she is. I do some other verifications. And so we have technology that's coming out around these deep fakes that's helping us sort of like limit the potential for them. But it does take intentionality on our part and an emotional response, right? Just like when there's a breach, you want to make sure that you've sort of thought through it and prepared for it. Like, hey, mom and dad, if you're, don't ever expect that if you're going to call me, I'm going to send you, Google gift cards, because we know, that's never going to be a thing. So never fall for a scam, because people are opportunistic. And I think it's just that do two-factor verification, pick up the phone, call them, do some other thing before you take an action. It's probably the easiest way to combat it right now.
Yeah, anytime someone's asking for a large amount of money, that's a huge red flag, even if it's your wife or someone that you know. Just things like that, I think, using kind of common sense will be very helpful in these situations. So let's go big now and talk about large regional chains and national franchises where there is possibly even more risk, because the bigger you are, the more likely you are to be a target. And like you had mentioned earlier, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And some past examples of breaches include companies like AT&T and Adobe, even Microsoft. So what kind of infrastructure when it comes to, let's say, staff, hardware, software needs to be in place to make sure those companies are protected?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing in this case is there's no one magic bullet that's going to solve this problem. In the cyber world, there's a theory called layer and defense in depth, meaning you have to put lots of different layers and lots of different depths in place for protecting different things. So depending on your business, if brand is your most important thing, then you're going to put tools that are monitoring social media. If credit card data is your most important thing, you're going to do things around PCI and those. And so large chains that have multiple exposures have to have different levels and depths of these protections, tools, companies they're working with, partners they're using, things they subscribe to, industry things to understand if other chains are getting attacked. right? Because the egress usually comes through these third parties or other things that people are putting in their restaurants. And so having that layer and that depth is really, really important. Again, at the end of the day, your best tool is your employees. So the more that they're prepared, the more that they're trained, the more that they're like, well, that's weird. We didn't, we didn't end up running any sales today at the end of the day. Well, something's probably wrong. I should tell somebody, right?
Yeah,
or,
right.
Hey, all of a sudden this weird volume of business is coming through the e-store or whatnot. Hey, there's probably something going on. So employees are your best sensing mechanism. And then put some of those other tools that you probably wouldn't do as an independent or a small business, but you would if you were multi-chain, right? There's now partnerships with companies that monitor your identity, monitor your perimeter. We use one for us. We have a third-party company that basically sits and watches all of our perimeter. And if it detects if things happen, right, you don't do that as a small, but as you get bigger and bigger, some of those tools that can automate that are really, really beneficial.
Yeah, and I think now that you've mentioned that, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but it almost feels like the ones that are growing rapidly, there are, Kava is a restaurant that's growing rapidly, Raising Cane's is a restaurant that's growing rapidly. So as these companies or these restaurants are growing so quickly, some of those growing pains may come on the cybersecurity side. And so all the things that you're talking about or that you just mentioned seem like it'd be even more important for restaurants like that.
Yep, especially in fast-moving growing when, the status quo isn't a norm, so you can't detect if there's something abnormal in your environment. Then it really is having a little bit of that practice drill or having some of the that can alert you. I think is a really smart first move.
So, what are some things that businesses may overlook when preparing their IT and cybersecurity teams?
I think that, again, it goes back to the human mistake aspect. Most of these breaches occur not because of an intentional employee problem, but because they made a mistake. And you got to be aware of that. The human mistakes are still going to happen. So no matter how good your tools are, you still have to make sure that you factor the human aspect in it. But then really simple things like, backups, specifically backups that are offline, right? So backups that can't get ransomware encrypted or, touched by other things. So just like you would do in your personal life, you keep stuff offline, you print stuff off, you put it in your safe. Those practices that can really help protect in the event something goes on. Those are the things that are easily overlooked in today's world. Like people want to jump out to talking about tools and AI, and they're forgetting how complex are your passwords, or how often was the last time you had your employees change their password, or is everyone that logging into the point of sale using the exact same PIN number, right? And it's hard in a retail environment where there's a high amount of turnover. Having a lot of process and procedure around employee setups and all of that are things to easily look over, because it's sometimes easier. It's like, oh, there's always just a 4-digit PIN for that point of sale. Probably something that will be overlooked, especially as you mentioned in high growth, when everyone's growing and lots of new people are coming in. You're like, who is that person that just wandered into the back of the kitchen, right? Things like checking IDs, and there's something new plugged in. I should ask somebody about that. So it's all those basics of common sense. I think that are your best tools.
Yeah, I laughed when you said PIN number because it just reminded me of the Spaceballs scene where he uses 1, 2, 3, 4 as his passcode. So we don't want to do that. That's something we don't want to do. So we did touch upon this a little bit already. AI is still in its infancy. What are some benefits and risks for businesses when it comes to implementing AI?
Yeah, and that's probably a 5-hour just scratching the surface topic. But in the sense of cyber, I think when we think about AI, we think about AI in really two camps, right? We talk about one is it's something that's going to help us with efficiency. So think of that as the sous chef for your restaurant, right? You still have a head chef or a main chef that's ensuring that the product is coming out the way you want. That's kind of how you want to look at, if you're going to use AI for efficiency, you can say, hey, this can help reduce some of the mundane, or it can reduce some of the repetitive tasks, but you still want an expert, someone who's been there, done that, to be able to go, yes, that's the right recipe for what's coming in. It's the right way our ingredients are going to be put together, right? So if you think about it from an efficiency standpoint, it's great to use it, but always have experts there to ensure what you're getting is the real information you want for your location. On the same side, the biggest concern is this idea of rogue information. Information that's either not right, or in the cyber sense, it's scammy emails, it's scammy setups, it's deep fakes. In that sense, think of it like, bad ingredients, right? Or it's a bad recipe. It's like one step's forgotten. AI is not going to be sort of perfect in that sense. And if anything, it's going to be sort of purposefully on the cyber side, kind of getting you off balance so that you say yes instead of where you would normally say no. So you got to think of that as the idea of it could be rogue. And that's probably the largest challenge, is getting rogue information out of AI. And that's why we're still in its infancy. It's everywhere. It's built into most devices now. I don't think you can carry around a cell phone now that doesn't have their version of AI in it. I think every product has it in, at least from a marketing standpoint. But the real importance is understanding what does it mean to your business, and is it going to help you? Like, is it a sous chef that's going to help your main chef, or is it something you're going to have to continuously be fighting, like sort of bad ingredients?
Yeah. I'm just so curious. I know it's really young and we might be getting a little bit off topic. My wife's uncle actually works for Google. He works on YouTube side, but he said that the biggest investment the company has made is in AI. And there's no way to monetize that right now, but all of the competitors are investing in AI. So it's something that they kind of have to do. So it's just like, where are we going to be in the next, 10 years, by 2030, 2035, where are we going to be with AI? I'm pretty curious as to where it's going.
It's good. I think curious is a good place to stay with AI. You should be exploring it. You should be playing with it. If you're not dabbling in it in the Chat GPT spaces or the Soras or the all those things, I think it's great for people to be exploring. But it's also just like any technology change we've gone through. If you think about, not so long ago, we used to carry around a digital camera and a day planner and all that. It's condensed. It's just another one of those evolutions for us, and we as a society have to figure out how to integrate it and bring it in. But it is one of those more intriguing spaces because it does really cut time out if you use it effectively. And so I think being curious, exploring it is the thing that's going to be the most interesting. I think if you turn a blind eye to it, you will get surprised by it.
Yeah, absolutely. So this might turn into another 5-hour conversation question, but what is the greatest IT challenge companies will face in 2025?
I think the biggest IT challenge is, how do the leadership teams start flipping themselves horizontally than being traditionally vertical? So a lot of organizations, technology is a very vertical thing. It's used in an area or it's a function. We're hard pressed today to find an aspect of business that does not have technology embedded in it. And so it's this idea of going horizontal and making sure that we can take leaders and develop leaders who can build relationships, who can have conversations about what's possible and what's not. And it's not just something that becomes an IT thing. It really becomes a business thing. So I think our biggest challenge in the IT space, and this is what I share with a lot of other CIOs, is I think leadership is our biggest challenge. AI is going to push us on that front. It's going to accelerate certain roles. It's going to it's sort of strain a couple of other roles because they're not going to know what to do if it can be automated. It's going to change how we approach things because the access to information is so much more rapid. Now it's all about, how do we do informed decision making? And I think that's the biggest challenge, is how do your technology leaders and teams go horizontal to bring that decision making to all aspects of your business?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to actually close this conversation. I feel like I learned quite a bit in my conversation with you. So I appreciate the time, Andy. Thank you for joining us today. And I hope our audience has learned a little bit of something too. So if you like this episode, subscribe to us. This will be on the R2 YouTube channel. It'll be on our website. And so thanks for joining us. We hope to see you guys next time. Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, David.